Hello and welcome to SDG Live at the World Economic Forum in Davos. My name is Stephen Keppel and I'm the Vice President for Social Impact at Univision and Fusion Media Group. I'm really excited to be here today to talk a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals. And specifically in this conversation, we're going to talk about powering gender equality and inclusion. And I'm here with two amazing women. On my left is Olga Miller, who's the Managing Director of UBS Wealth Management. Welcome, Olga. And Rachel Samren, the Chief External Affairs Officer from Millicom. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm excited and interested to pick your brains a little bit on this topic and kind of what you're seeing here at Davos and kind of what the viewers at home on their computers, on their phones should take away. I want to start with some stats from a recent WEF report they put together that showed that it could take up to 170 years to reach gender equality if we continue operating, at the status quo. Also, I would note, even though the WEF has made an effort and they have sort of an all-female kind of leadership panel for Davos this year, which I think is great, I think it's only 21% of attendees are women. Even the forum talks about this as a long-term change. I think a lot of companies talk about it as a long-term change. 170 years is too long. So what can we do globally in the private sector and also with government to speed that up? And also kind of with that, how do we take advantage of all the momentum that's happening right now around the Me Too movement and a lot of the awareness? Like, how do we make sure that is productive? Olga, can you start?
I think the conversation is out there. It is very clear, women first. It is such a societal opportunity. It is a giant economic opportunity. What we need to do is to make sure that now we have action, that we have a proper business case, that we measure, that we follow up, and that the conversation stays alive. So in UBS, what we have been doing with the 5 years change plan to make women a business priority, which we launched actually here at the WEF last year, is really to make women visible, to make them matter as our customers and also inside our organization. And then we detected a couple of opportunities how to accelerate. Financial confidence being one thing. So we put out a pledge to increase the financial confidence of 1 million women, funneling capital towards gender equality, which is a matter not just for women, but for men and women. But we need investment products and we need solutions to actually be able to enable those capital flows. So we believe there is tangible action needed, one that is measured and one that is followed through so that the conversation doesn't remain just a conversation.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and I think, as Olga was saying, it's first of all the conversation is out there, and that's great. I think some of us have focused on this already before. It's always been a priority, certainly for us at Millicom, where we've looked at the role of women, not just internally, but also very much actually externally, because of course they are 50% of our potential consumers. They are 50% of our potential recruiting pool. And we have worked together with the GSMA on a program that they have called Connected Women, which is an externally focusing program where we do exactly as Olga was suggesting. You have targets. You set targets for closing the gender gap in terms of mobile money usage as well as mobile data usage. You have specific targets that an operation in a given country can sign up to. They commit to the initiative. And it's actually a shorter target than perhaps what we're discussing with the SDGs. Many of our targets are actually set for 2020 rather than for 2030, where we then are committing to close that gender gap, to make sure that women can access technology as much as men can, that they can become part of both the digital ecosystem as well as the financial ecosystem, and thereby contribute to their economic and societal circles that they are in a much better and bigger way.
And have you seen progress?
Absolutely, we have seen progress. We were the first operator to sign up in Africa when Rwanda started as our first operation. Since then, all our African operations have joined in fantastic coordination and cooperation with GSMA, who've done tremendous research on this topic for us to understand what are the barriers for women to access technology. In Tanzania, where we had, I think that the goal was by 2020 indeed to get to close the gender gap. I mean, already in the first year we're up to sort of 37%, fantastic uptake. So there's appetite. It's just a question of understanding where to address it and then really, like Olga said, to execute as well.
And Olga, back to you. So both of your companies have made this a priority, closing the gender gap, looking for gender parity, at least on the consumer side. I'm hoping as well on the sort of internal sort of HR side. What did it take for internal leadership to make this a focus area, a priority?
So in our case, I think the business case is out there. Women hold an increasing share of the world's private wealth. They grow wealth faster than men do, by 7% approximately, is the stat, because of entrepreneurship, because of inheritance, because of return to the workforce. And for us, as a large wealth manager, it is absolutely paramount that we serve the women in the way how they would like to be served, right? So I think it didn't take a lot of convincing in order to put out that this makes a lot of sense for us as a company. The fact that we also can achieve an enormous contribution to society, because take for instance 8 out of 10 women say that they would like to invest socially responsibly, is actually a wonderful effect as well, right? And we put a calculation behind this, how much would come out if capital from women could be mobilized towards sustainable development goals. In the next 5 years it could be up to 2.3 trillion.
Wow. So you referenced the Sustainable Development Goals. That's really why we're here and talking about them. Rachel, tell me a little bit how the framework of the SDGs and I think it's Goal 6 is gender equality. Goal 5, I'm sorry. Goal 5 is gender equality. How does that framework kind of support the work that you guys are doing?
I think from the mobile industry, as I'm sure you heard in some of the previous conversations, I mean, the mobile industry can really help drive all of the goals. That's a fact, because of the technology factor. We at Millicom have ever chosen to focus very much on number 5 and number 17. And 17 are partnerships for the goals. And I think that is actually, I would say, probably what is really the beauty of the SDGs and how they support all this. It's about getting people together. It's about getting people together and saying, we'll use our expertise, all of us individually, to make something bigger and better out of it. For us, I think the SDGs have really helped focus attention. Like I said, mobile industry can support all of the SDGs, but everyone trying to do everything is usually likely to achieve less. So it's really helping focus, it helps us frame this to say, okay, where can we really contribute? What is it we can do best? And in our case, we've said that is through partnerships where we bring our expertise, our technology. Others bring other factors to the table, and then jointly we can help actually achieve the goals. So I think they're helping focus. They're helping really put attention on making sure that the parties that you bring to the table deliver, as we said, actionable results.
So here we're talking about the telecoms industry and finance. Maybe talk a little bit about that too. Like how do you guys approach the goals? And do you have a specific focus on Goal 5 and Goal 17, or is it just broad across the board?
Well, for us, we put out a pledge last year, actually, also here at the WEF, that we would like to contribute 5 billion of capital towards sustainability, right? And the SDGs provide, exactly as already said, a very powerful framework where all the great activities that have been happening can fall under and can be structured, and I think in that regard they have a very accelerating power. Yeah. For us, it's also about connecting private capital towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and in this recent white paper that was published here at the WEF now this year, I think one of the key messages in there is actually that contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals is not taking a loss on financial returns. On the contrary, it is a massive gain, both financially as well as socially, and I think we wouldn't be able to do that without the powerful framework of the SDGs, because it helps, as you already explained, to structure, and in that regard also to structure collaboration.
So again, kind of honing in on the idea of gender equality and these gender gaps, I think there's 2 things we're seeing here at Davos. One is kind of the developing world, like how do we sort of bring women up to parity and make sure they have the opportunities in education and health and all these sort of things. I think the other is also just looking even in the developed world, and we mentioned at the top that, for example, there's only 21% of Davos attendees are women. You're both women in leadership, you've been here, you've been going around. why aren't there more women leaders here, and what can be done about it? And I think not just, we're using Davos as the example because we're here, but I think there's a lot of, and it doesn't have to be events, you know, there's also just positions of leadership and board positions and things like that. And I think there's a lot of lip service that we need to do more, but how can we do more? If there's, you know, if there's some young professionals watching at home, like how can leaders, the private sector especially, public sector, do more to increase the position of women?
I think it's very much, it's about a two-way conversation. That's what we sort of always say internally. And I think for us looking at it, we are primarily based in emerging markets, but our headquarters are in the developed markets. So we see both sides of it because we have talented women in the organization in both places, of course. And the way we look at it is, I mean, in the emerging market operations that we have, you have a very young population, incredibly ambitious and driven, and they've grown up in the internet age, so they know what's out there, and they know what they want. So it's a different way of working now compared to just even 5 or 10 years ago, and that's what we need to address. So we need to say we have this tremendously talented young female pool of workers who want to achieve, who want to get up the ladder, and then therefore I think would more naturally also be invited to a Davos, because I think right now we have a layer. It's like we need a generational change, right? You can't suddenly say we're not inviting, you know, the population that normally gets invited, so you have to bring up the benches. And that's where we need to focus. And so we need to make sure that we have career paths that allow them to have families, come back to work, and still actually be able to come all the way up to the top. I think a lot of it lies at that ground level. That's where we need to focus. We can talk a lot at this top level, but unless we address that level, make sure that we can look after our employees, our talented, all talented employees. This is not just about gender, it's about inclusion more broadly, but if we can make sure that we can look after them and allow flexibility, then I think they will come up through the ranks much more naturally, and then you will see more women also at Davos, hopefully.
Yeah. And Olga, what is the role of men in this? Because there's a lot of men here, a lot of men in leadership positions around the world, in the developing world, in the developed world. So what is the role?
I think the change that needs to happen is not a female echo chamber change. We need to lift the conversation out of this because, as already mentioned, gender equality is such an opportunity for all of us. So the role of man is to transform jointly with the women. Join in, join the conversation, and especially join the action. It's more than welcome. If you take an example of, we put out an investment product this year, January 3rd. This is an equality investment product. It allows you to make a vote with your wallet for gender equality. And I believe if you are a father with daughters, for example, or just any individual can now invest and can make a contribution. And I think it just takes all of us, because especially SDG 5 has so many multifaceted aspects that need to happen. We're not talking about a silver bullet that now will provide the solution. For me, we're talking about an ecosystem of change that needs to happen.
And that's a two-way conversation.
And that's
right?
a two-way conversation.
Yeah, everybody needs to be
all of
involved.
us to make that happen.
So here we are in 2018. The conversation is being had, it seems. There's a lot of focus on the issue and topic, both in society, in business, and government, which is, I think, is great. Now, the global goals have a goal of being met by 2030. So maybe think a little bit about 2030, and if we were back here in Davos or somewhere else around the world, what does 2030 look like sort of to each of you in regards to particularly gender equality and the type of work that you both are doing? Olga?
I would love that we don't need to have an in-depth conversation about a conversation. I would love that we stand here and we look at the report and say, it's not going to be 100 years or 170 years, but that we all cheer and say, hey, stuff started to happen.
And I would say, yes, I couldn't agree more. And then more specifically in relation to Millicom, I would say that both internally, that we have allowed what I referred to earlier, that natural change to happen, where women naturally can rise up through the ranks and still balance their work and personal life and take up more of the senior positions. And at the same time, externally, that we have indeed closed the gender gap that is out there in terms of mobile technology uses between men and women.
And I think finally, to the young women that are watching, this conversation, what would you say to them? You know, I think maybe, you know, the women that are in their 20s or 30s that maybe they're just getting started in their career and they're thinking about a lot of issues like this, and they're hearing the conversation and worried about some of the barriers that are out there. What would you say to them?
For me, one recommendation I would have, start managing your money. Women, finances are one of the most untapped opportunities for social change. Start managing your money because of the compounding effect. You need to start early in order not to lose out later. That would be one big recommendation, and make it count. Be careful where you put it.
That's great. And Rachel?
I'd say everyone has the same equal opportunity. It's a two-way conversation, but don't be afraid to speak up. Ask for the opportunity if you don't think it's there.
So manage your money. Don't be afraid to speak up. I think that's really great advice. Thank you guys so much for your time. The conversation will continue online using the hashtag SDGLive. You can also go to sdglive.org to see more of the videos. Thanks for watching. This is a great conversation. We'll be back with another conversation shortly.